and we'll get started. This certainly is a topic that is of importance and people are interested in, and so we are so very proud to have Mariana joining us today to be able to start the conversation as we go into finishing 2021 and going into 2022, and hearing what good work that her company is doing and also what's happening within her sector of the industry. Okay. So I do have the antitrust policy up on the screen. And so Tony, if you would, I'd like to turn it over to you so you can remind everyone of the PC and again, our responsibilities.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yes,
you have the antitrust policy stated on your screen. It is obviously familiar to anyone who has been a regular attendee of PCA meetings and webinars in the past, and the rules have not changed. I see really little opportunity in the webinar presentation we're about to enjoy for anybody to go off course and discuss company prices or costs, or to get into any allocation of markets, territories, etc. So I think with that, I will simply listen in. I'm going to screen any questions that come up to make sure that they don't get into sensitive areas. And with that, Mariana, I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Yes, so with that, I did put a brief audio connection on the screen. Since we really have not opened up audio, I don't think that should be an issue for our group today. However, I will post this. This was on the screen for quite some time earlier for those of you who arrived in advance. If you send a question, as Tony mentioned, we will be pre-screening those questions to ensure that there's nothing discussed that should not. But if you would like to send a question, simply go through your dashboard under the question box and submit that to us, and we will have those prepared for the end of the presentation for Mariana to answer and discuss. You're welcome throughout the entire presentation to send us those questions so that we can have them ready to facilitate at the end. Okay, moving along. Oops. We do have some additional webinars planned. So we have another webinar with Michelle Balmosy on Monday next week. So for those of you who are attending today, if you would like to attend and have not registered, then registration is still open for that, as well as the additional webinars that we have planned throughout the remaining of December. Some of you have been attending some of our other webinars, so this may be familiar. As with all face-to-face meetings that are ongoing now or looking at for 2022, that safety will be our additional changes will be put in place for those of you who attend our live events, and some information will be forthcoming soon on how we plan to conduct. Our next face-to-face meeting is in April 27th through the 29th, and it will be in West Palm Beach, or Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Very accessible through the West Palm Beach International Airport, as well as Fort Lauderdale, Miami, or even Orlando. So we anticipate this will be a great location for those who wish to attend in person, and hopefully will be very accessible for our international attendees, which we are so looking forward to seeing again. With that, I will introduce Mariana and her company, but most of you can see Mariana and her accomplishments and her bio on the screen. So I just want to take a moment really to highlight her company, and I think that Mariana will mention this in her presentation, but I had already pulled something to extend a congratulations to them as well. So with that, I wanted to just point out that one thing that we discussed purely as we discuss sustainability is social responsibility. And the intention behind sustainability that we all realize is for our future and our future generations to come. And so I was very pleased and just so proud of Grupo RB and their social efforts, where they had the insight or the foresight to actually go out into the community and have a project, a photo project with children, to really capture the world and the perception of the world around them through their eyes. And I thought that that was just an amazing idea. And I wanted to send a shout out to you and to your company to say, congratulations for looking outside of the box, because as we try and make decisions for moving into the future, this lends light to the fact of who we're working to protect and to ensure that they have a planet to live in that we do today. So congratulations on that. I did, just like I said, wanted to take a moment because I was so incredibly happy to see that. And this was a recent, I believe you all did this at the end of September. So this was a recent accomplishment of yours. So congratulations. And with that, as we're getting ready, I'm going to go ahead and make Mariana the organizer so that she can present to us. So we'll give her just a second to switch her screen over. There you go. So Mariana is with Grupo RB, Luresa Resins, and she is, I want to point out, she's the only female member of the PCA Board of Directors. So we're very proud to have her on our board and leading our governance and our executive committee. Although she's from Portugal, and I know that that is where her heart is, as mine. She currently resides in Madrid, Spain, with her husband and with her children. And I know that Grupo RB has been doing a tremendous amount of work, particularly with their seedling programs down in Brazil, investing in research and development to improve techniques and to improve technology and crossbreeding, so best trees and highest resin and wood production in the future. So with that, Mariana, I'm going to extend everything to you so that you can get us started.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone in the Western Hemisphere. Good afternoon, good evening for all the others in the Eastern Hemisphere. I would like to start thanking the PCA for this new opportunity to make a presentation. And of course, especially I would like to thank Amanda for her kind invitation for making it possible. And thank you as well for your initial remarks. They are much appreciated. Thank you. So today I will speak to you again about sustainability. I believe it's perfectly clear to everyone now that this is a word, a subject that will be in everyone's mind, in everyone's agenda for a long time. Sustainability is here to stay. We can't be more redundant than this. And in this sense, I'll address sustainability, particularly in the pine oleoresin sector, as I did before. My presentation is called Sustainability Towards the Future of Natural Resins, Episode 2, The Return of the Tapper. For all of you who saw Episode 1, the beginning, you will recognize the common thread of this saga. I will definitely repeat many aspects that were already mentioned during Episode 1 and other short films that I have been working on. But I will introduce some new ideas here, so please stay tuned. I will start by refreshing everyone's memory on tapping activity, mentioning some aspects on the evolution of our sector to today and towards the future. Then I'll address main concepts around sustainability, introducing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, and the GRI, Global Report Initiative standards. And finally, adding to what's happening within my own company in Brazil, I will include as well a short insight on tapping activity in other countries aiming to bespeak the importance of tapping activity in sustainable development, namely in what concerns social and environmental dimensions. We generally call tapping or tapping activity to the harvesting of natural resin, meaning the operation that the person carries out to collect natural resin from live pine trees. Natural resin, as you all know, is the viscous, sticky substance that some trees, our beloved pine trees in this case, expel as defense mechanism to an external action. So basically, we're talking about a person that goes from pine tree to pine tree, making small incisions in the tree's trunk and collecting the resin that the tree expels. This is tapping. Natural resin is harvested all around the world for centuries. To be more precise, for thousands of years. Archaeological remains discovered in the past years show that natural resin was harvested by Neanderthals during the Middle Paleolithic period between 55,000 and 40,000 years ago here in Europe, just to give you a glimpse. These prehistoric guys already knew about the potential of natural resin back then. They knew how to mix it with beeswax, for example, to get the right viscosity, and they used it widely in several applications, namely the ones connected with adhesive and sealant properties. All along history till today, amongst the various uses of natural resins, it's always mandatory to mention the naval stores. As you all know, our industry was once known as the naval stores, and only recently has the name PineChemicals become widespread. It is also fundamental to mention the importance of natural resin during the Industrial Revolution and the major advances achieved since then. The tapping techniques have evolved tremendously, as well as the industrial processing and applications, of course. Even so, it is still a labor-intensive activity, and there are many opportunities to keep improving. Nowadays, and due to this amazing worldwide spread activity and development, we can find different tapping techniques from country to country, from region to region. The tools and the stimulants are different, the industrial transformation processes are different, and of course, each pine tree species by itself provides a unique special type of pine oleoresin with singular chemical and physical properties. All this diversity makes natural resin and tapping activity even more rich and appealing. It is definitely a diverse cultural experience. Just think about the strong turpentine odor of Halepensis pine oleoresin, or the solid, thick crude gum you get from Caribea species in Brazil. And try to hear the sound of a solitary tapper cutting the pine tree's bark in a native forest in Indonesia, or listen to the forklift power drill making a borehole in Georgia, USA. What a world. And now that your senses are all awake and you have entered the right tapping mood, it's time to bring you back to Earth and point your shuttle to the future. The sky is the limit. Where are we heading to in what concerns tapping activity? Well, there is continuous research and development in all steps of the value chain. We work with genetics, we work with forest management, we work with harvesting techniques, we work with logistics, we work with industrial processes, we work with energy and efficiency, we work with technology, we work with product development, with applications, with residues. The opportunities to innovate are everywhere. The only conviction we have is that all these opportunities are necessarily connected with digitalization. We are long past the Industrial Revolution and have already entered the digital era. It's time for digital tapping. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I kindly ask you to buckle your seatbelts since we are about to enter into the next chapter of this presentation. Let's take a break on tapping and let's talk about concepts around sustainability. You have all heard this before, but it is necessary to repeat and remind all these concepts anyway. So the most direct and simplest definition I found about sustainability is the one in Wikipedia, and it says that sustainability is the ability to exist constantly. One of the big distributors in the chemical industry, you all know them for sure, has a slogan regarding sustainability that I just love. It's a great catch. It just breaks the word sustainability in two and has sustain and ability. And that's it. That's sustainability, the ability to sustain. And pardon me the advertising, but it says it all. The only thing to have in mind is that this ability is not granted. The main idea of sustainability is always of something that lasts in time and at the same time, something that is not secured for the future. So you need to constantly improve your ability to sustain. There is also a very interesting article from Tom Coleman and John Farrington called "What is Sustainability?" that I always like to mention. The authors refer that the origin of the term sustainability is connected with forestry, meaning never to harvest more than what the forest yields in new growth. I believe that this connection of sustainability with forestry, belonging ourselves to the forestry sphere, is totally pertinent and is worth emphasizing. We also need to keep in mind all the time, never harvest more than what the forest yields in new growth. Along with sustainability, we often mention sustainable development, and this, of course, is widely spread by the United Nations as per first mentioned in the Brundtland Report in 1987 as the ability to fulfill the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to fulfill their own needs. We can consider it, and it's often described so, sustainable development as the path we have to take to achieve sustainability. Three core elements are pointed out as fundamental to achieve sustainable development, the so-called pillars of sustainable development and commonly known as the 3 Ps, people as social inclusion, planet as in environmental protection, and profit as in economic development. The correct balance between these 3 Ps should take us in the right path towards sustainability. Just follow the Ps. Further to that, as you also know, the UN has established 17 specific goals for sustainable development integrated within these 3 main pillars and to be reached till 2030. The 17 goals are no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructures, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and finally, partnership for the goals. Quoting the United Nations website, the Sustainable Development Goals are a call for action by all countries, poor, rich, and middle income, to promote prosperity while protecting the planet. They recognize that ending poverty must go hand in hand with strategies that build economic growth and address a range of social needs, including education, health, social protection, and job opportunities, while tackling climate change and environmental protection. This call for action is addressed literally to everyone. We all have our share of responsibility in the accomplishment of each of these goals, as individuals, as members of a certain community, as citizens of any country, as humans, and as companies, as sectors, as industries as well. And that's why we're here today. We have this major responsibility to contribute to the achievement of these goals and to sustainable development. And we have to show it. In response to this, the need to communicate the responsibility and the efforts of entities and organizations in the path towards sustainable development has arisen. It is common today to hear about sustainability reports and/or non-financial reports. There is no strict rule about the preparation of these reports, but a consensual ensemble of standards was created by the hand of the Global Report Initiative, GRI, an independent non-profit institution, in order to help organizations to use a common language to report their actions. These are called the GRI standards. They are considered, of course, the most widely used standards in sustainability reporting, and they are available as free public good. One of the main aspects of these reports that is strongly emphasized by the GRI standards concerns stakeholders. Each stakeholder connected to our activity demands for a specific piece of information, and the purpose of any report is attend that information. And in this sense, the identification of target stakeholders is fundamental. I'll come back to the UN's SDGs and the GRI standards later on, but this brings me to the last chapter of my presentation. It's a long chapter. It's a long chapter, but it's a short approach to show the relevance of tapping activity within sustainable development and achievement of the UN's SDGs. Starting from the identification of some of the stakeholders within the social and environmental dimension of the tapping activity and corresponding impacts, and connecting them with the accomplishment of the goals. For this purpose, I will take the opportunity to speak about 3 different tapping operations. I will start by presenting my own company in Brazil and what we have been doing in terms of social and environmental dimensions. I will also speak about Ejido Verde in Mexico, and as well of the tapping activity in general in Spain. So our company, RB Group, stands as a leading multinational in the natural resins sector. We started our activities in Brazil in 1992, and we are operating within a vertical integrated organization, including forest management from research in nurseries to plantation, thinning and logging. We also include harvesting, both of pine oleoresin and wood, and of course, industry, processing the raw materials that we collect. We are currently operating with a team of around 3,000 people, and approximately 85% of those are working in rural areas. Within Brazil, we operate in the southern part of the country, mainly inner São Paulo state, but also in Minas Gerais, Paraná, and Rio Grande do Sul. We have a multitude of integrated projects centered on sustainable development, ranging from the correct management and use of natural resources through efficiency and safety in processes, culminating in waste and water management, and especially focused in the social dimension of our activity. We depend on nature and we depend on people, so we have to look after both. At Grupo RB, we have assumed the commitment to foster among all the stakeholders of our activity good practices aiming for sustainable development. To reinforce this commitment, we established in 2019 a foundation called Instituto Resins do Brasil, whose mission is to promote our core principles throughout the fields of work and within the regions where we operate in southern Brazil. This concerns especially our own team and respective families and the local communities of the areas where we operate in. Starting with our direct team, it is our understanding that the improvement of working conditions and the prosperity of people working with us are fundamental. This has direct impact on around 3,000 people and respective families. In this sense, we promote all kinds of training and education, including, for example, fire prevention and fire combat, physical preparation or health and safety aspects, besides the regular training for the correct performance of the worker's activity. Within the forest, we also guarantee, of course, all the necessary equipment and facilities to promote the necessary good working conditions. This includes IPEs, tools, rest areas, support areas, toilets, medical care, transportation, and so on. Our actions also include various campaigns on health and safety. Several examples can be pointed out as the ones that you are seeing. And as you may imagine, some of them were very relevant, for instance, during the pandemic and the confinements. Further to this, activities with local communities are also already at place, focusing on childhood and adolescence in small dimension villages selected specifically according to social needs. We are supporting cultural and educational activities to promote social inclusion and transformation. Our actions aim to make a positive contribution on more than 6,000 families within those villages. Another of the projects we are conducting and that has gained special relevance in the past years is what we call promotion forests. We are basically fostering partnerships with small rural landowners to develop a sustainable economic exploitation based on natural resins. This is a business model that exists in Brazil for many years and that we have recently developed within our company. We support the landowners through the plantation and management, sustainable management of the forest, and we have the commitment to buy their pine oleoresin resin when the area starts producing at market prices. This brings an extra income for this landowner, sometimes it's only income, promoting the settling of people in rural and deprived areas, contributing for environmental protection, fire protection, and employment generation. We started working with 124 families covering about 1,600 hectares of land, and we have now reached more than 600 family farms. Regarding environmental protection, it is important to state that Brazilian legislation on this matter is strict, and inspection and supervision are also strict and effective, despite what we continuously hear in the news about the Amazonian forest. Brazil is actually the country in the world with more absolute area of native forests, and it is mandatory for any kind of agroforestry exploitation to maintain 20% of the area of operation as preservation or native species. As you may understand, the management of an existing forest or the plantation of a new forest obliges to the management and protection of these native areas. The main pine tree species that are harvested in Brazil, Eliote and Caribea, they are not native Brazilian species. But the advantage of working with pine trees, and this happens a little bit all over the world, not just in Brazil, is that pine trees are not, as far as I understand, a resource ravenous. On the contrary, pine trees coexist with native species without too much competition, and they foster biodiversity and ecological balance. This means that native fauna and flora are not endangered. On the contrary, pine tree forests are the welcoming habitat for all kinds of native species, and they contribute to the maintenance of hydric balance, soil stability, and enrichment and restoration of degraded lands. We are currently working with 2 pine nurseries in Brazil that produce about 12 million saplings per year, and we are managing sustainably more than 55,000 hectares of commercial producing forests spread in the above mentioned states of Brazil. Entering the example of Mexico and project Ejido Verde, it must be mentioned that tapping is a millenary activity in Mexico, and contrary to Brazil, pine trees are native species in Mexico. But this activity has decreased substantially in the past decades due to external factors, along with deforestation, mostly due to illegal logging and problems with organized crime. Ejido Verde emerges as a regenerative pine resin company, proposing a unique reforestation model to restore degraded lands with the establishment of commercial agroforestry plantations. The company's aim is the harvesting of pine oleoresin and to convert Mexico in a lead supplier in the global pine chemicals industry. The business model of Ejido Verde has similarities with some Brazilian operations through support of local communities and assurance of vertical integration from nurseries to industry. There is strong commitment as well on research and development in every stage of the value chain, as well as in Brazil. The main goals of this project are the restoration and conservation of forests, the encouragement of tapping activity, the increase of tappers' income, and consequently reduce immigration, and at last, the maintenance of cultural identity, so strong within the tapping communities in Mexico. This project is currently involving 625 family farms and about 1,200 direct jobs extended in an area of more than 4,000 hectares of pine forests. The expectations are to triple these numbers by 2030 and impact positively in more than 2,000 family farms, concerning more than 6,000 direct jobs in rural areas and 12,000 hectares of planted forest. Finally, I would like to mention another example about tapping activity precisely from where I'm speaking to you right now, from Spain. Spain, like Mexico, has a millenary tradition in tapping activity and natural resins use as well. In the middle of the 20th century, Spain was one of the biggest harvesters of natural resin in the world, reaching by that time an annual volume of 60,000 tons of pine oleoresin collected through an extension of more than 600,000 hectares and about 5,000 tapping workers. This volume decreased dramatically during the second half of the 20th century, reaching rock bottom roughly at the turn of the millennium, with only a residual volume of pine oleoresin being collected. With the 2008 crisis, the activity resurged somewhat, but maintains fragile since then. It has passed even so, since that rock bottom period till now, till this decade, from less than 2,000 tons of crude gum to almost 12,000 tons of crude gum collected, from less than 100 tapping workers to more than 1,000 tapping workers at present day, and from an extension of about 20,000 hectares exploited to more than 120 hectares of managed pine forest for resin. The operation model existing in Spain is slightly different from the ones we described in Mexico and in Brazil. In this case, the pine forests are native, as in Mexico, and subject to sustainable forest management and regulation and planning since the beginning of the 20th century. Pine tapping forests are mostly public, and tappers are mostly independent workers. Pine tapping is considered a sustainable activity in Spain, contributing to several aspects within the social and environmental dimension, preventing forest fires, plagues, and diseases, contributing to the mitigation and adaptation of climate change, to the reinforcement of biodiversity and ecosystems, reinforcing territorial cohesion, inclusion, and setting of people in rural and depopulated areas, providing income for many people at risk of exclusion. You will notice that I mentioned specifically the direct stakeholders of the tapping activity for all these three countries described, and meaning specifically the tapping workers, its families, and also the communities where these operations are integrated. And as you understood, the goals are basically the same everywhere. Territorial cohesion, settling of people in rural and depopulated areas, provide dignified work and income for communities at risk of exclusion. Regarding environmental aspects, we may conclude that the goals are the same as well. Stop deforestation and promote reforestation. Contribute to biodiversity and ecosystems balance, including hydric and land stability. Contribute to mitigation and adaptation of climate change, to mention but the most visible ones. You have noticed as well that I have not mentioned the economical aspect of sustainable development. In fact, the most important one. If these operations are not economically viable, if there isn't any profit for all the stakeholders involved, we presume that the activity would no longer exist. Our first responsibility, our duty as companies, is to generate wealth and to assure the future of our activity under the umbrella of environmental and social dimensions. So as you see, there are many more aspects to approach and to consider, to identify, to recognize, and I have touched but a tiny bit of what's at stake. Further stakeholders, further environmental aspects, and all its connections with the economical dimension. In this sense, I would like to come back to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the GRI standards. Within the 17 SDGs previously mentioned, we understand that the tapping operations described are, and considering its respective areas of influence, are contributing positively to the accomplishment of several goals, namely, no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructures, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and finally, partnership for the goals. We're in this together. Following on this subject, and in order to correctly communicate our contributions and our aims for the future, we must support ourselves on the GRI standards and move forward towards the development of a sustainability report. And getting close to the end of my presentation, I would like to reach out to all the pine oleoresin sector in every country and every continent in order to join alliance in partnership for the goals. Further to this, I would like to address as well to the global PineChemicals industry in the same sense. Join alliance in the partnership for the goals. The GRI standards actually comprise a specific sector program that I'm sure can respond to our needs to express our impacts to all our different stakeholders. And before I finish, I would like to thank all my team in Brazil and here in Spain for all the support and patience. I would also like to thank my friend Fredo Arias King in Mexico for all the information on Ejido Verde, and my friends Paqui and Guillermo here in Spain for sharing their wisdom on tapping activity and for the beautiful pictures they sent me. Episode 2, The Return of the Tapper, comes to the end. But this is certainly not the end of the saga, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episodes. And I finish as usual with my group's lemma, we plant the future. Thank you for your attention, and may the force be with you.
Thank you, Mariana, and I am so very glad that that slogan stuck from our lovely Portugal. So, as always, you did an amazing job, and so we appreciate the continuance of your update from that 2019 presentation. So, we do have, excuse me, a few questions that have come through, and then one was a comment, but I'm going to build a question from that. So with that, the first one is, what's the advantage of bio-based resin derivatives versus fossil-based?
So I would say that the first advantage is, of course, the renewable source material, the renewable green source material. As mentioned, with pine oleoresin, but also within the tall oil part of the sector, forests are managed in a sustainable way, and this is a guarantee of sustainable products to the further applications of our resins. I would add to this, and in continuance of my presentation, that natural bio-based resins do stand out for the social and environmental dimension that they represent. We need to take in consideration that the natural resin is supporting a local community of tapping workers, a local community that lives in a rural area, that is settled in a rural area, and that contributes to the environment in all the ways that we mentioned during the presentation. So these environmental and social aspects must be considered as well when we speak about bio-based resins. I hope to have answered the comment.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Okay, and the second question is, you had mentioned that you were working on other projects and have been working with other groups. Can you elaborate on other projects that you're working with? I know one recently this year had some presentations and quite a healthy discussion around bio-based derivatives, which was the incredible project. So if you could share some additional insight as to what you're seeing within the industry sector, that would be fantastic.
The Incredible project is actually an innovation project based on innovation networks on non-wood forest products. And so resin was one of these innovation networks, and there was also cork, mushrooms, edibles, aromatics, and all that. And within each innovation network, we have explored innovation opportunities in all the value chain, starting also with forest management and ending precisely in resin derivatives. There was a very interesting webinar around that with insights, for instance, on bio-based and biodegradable plastics made from natural or with natural resins within their composition. Regulation, legislation, opportunities. What we see is that the scope of applications within natural resins is not limited in any way, and research and development are growing in those fields in several dimensions. Another project that we were involved with here in Spain, and I also presented an image of that project, is the Sust Forest Plus project. This is a European level project, and participating countries are Portugal, Spain, and France. Within the deliverables of this project, we can consider, for instance, the development of the resin app. This is an application for mobile phones and tablets and computers that is connected with natural resin traceability, and not only traceability in certification point of view, but also as a contribution to the flow of information within the natural resin value chain. Another deliverable was, for instance, the carbon footprint of the sector in Portugal and in Spain. I believe that the results will be published in the next weeks. So I invite everyone to check the Sust Forest Plus website to check for those deliverables. Another deliverable was, for instance, the creation of an association, an international association of tapping territories. Portugal, Spain, and France and other countries in the Mediterranean area have joined. And within this integrated, within this network of integrated territories, another deliverable was the first step of kind of, how do you say this in English, certification of origin for natural resin, okay, for European natural resin.
Wow. So there's a lot of work coming out. I'm excited to see those results. I know that that's something that we've been quite interested in for some time. And it's very difficult to obtain the data when you're conducting those carbon footprint analysis. So I'm excited to see the information coming through from them. Okay, so the next question is, can you elaborate a little more on climate change effects on pine trees? It's probably a very important element of sustainability.
I don't understand if the question is the impact of climate change on pine trees or how pine trees can contribute to mitigate climate change.
We'll come back on that one, and I'll send a message over to ask him. It's the impact. I'm sorry, we'll come back to that one. The next question, and I'm sorry, Tony, I did not send this one to you, but this one is fairly innocuous because this has been an ongoing problem. And this is dealing with insects on pine trees or within the forest population. Can you elaborate on the pine bark beetle attacking pine trees or any other concerns that exist?
Plagues and diseases have always existed, and they are one of our major concerns. I know that studies have been carried out in order to understand the effects of tapping activity in these plagues and diseases. And when I speak about plagues, I am speaking about these beetles as well. And as far as I understood, there is not a consensual answer yet. But I believe I would need to make a further research on that. What I can do state is that tapping activity demands a continuous presence of a person, of people inside the forest, within the forest. And the tappers, the tapping workers, they know the forest they are working with. They are the first ones to detect if something is going on with the pine trees or not. They will notice immediately the difference. And so we say, and then it is quite obvious that the tapping workers' benefits for the forest are multiple. This is a constant guardian of the forest, not only in terms of these plagues and diseases, also in terms of fire prevention or any other situations, disruptions that may occur within the forest. Coming back to the question on climate change, one of the topics that is being discussed here in Spain and also in Brazil due to drought and extreme weather conditions is the decay of pine forests. This is something that pine tapping workers are already noticing. Scientists, academics are also noticing that. And so if the question was on that sense, definitely climate change is affecting the health of pine forests. On the other hand, if we look at the contribution of pine forests regarding climate change mitigation, what we know here in Europe and well, in other areas where pine forests exist, is that pine trees do contribute to stabilize soil, stabilize hydric balance, enrich in nutrients the soil, and so they are a very positive contribution for climate change.
I think that covered both. So you pulled the safe answer and stuck with both. All right. There's a few more that came in, and then we'll be very respectful of everyone's time. And I don't think you'll have the answer to this. And I apologize, Tony. This is really more of just a question on workers, and please chime in if you have any problem whatsoever. But this one was, do you have an estimation of how many pine tree tapping workers there are worldwide? Not yet.
No, I believe that would be a very important data, and that was my reach out for the pine oleo resin sector. I mean, we do have data, estimated data here in Spain. We can have estimated data in Brazil, but it would be important to have more data on that, because this social dimension is really a crucial question.
I agree. And then there's one last question, and it is fairly important, I know, for many other sectors within the industry. And so I guess it's only appropriate to ask this question is, do you anticipate that the oleo resin sector will be affected by the increased demand for biofuels?
It has been in the past. So this is a possibility that we have to consider. Well, within the industry, we always speak about the best use of our products, or the high value use of our products, and so we would think that the biofuel industry would be on the bottom of the list of uses of pine oleo resin, but you never know.
And that's a fair enough statement to say. So with that, I thank you so much, Mariana. You have provided a lovely update of pine tapping that is happening throughout the world. And as always, you bring such enthusiasm, and you're such an advocate for the oleo resin sector of the industry. So we thank you again. I'm going to pop over for just a moment before we hop off the screen and just show a couple reminders. And that is, everyone see my screen now? And that is just a reminder that we do have a webinar scheduled with Michelle Balmosy on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, providing a global overview for us. That's always well received and generally part of our international conference and our face-to-face. So we're pleased to have Michelle joining us for that. Again, if you're not able to attend and you have questions, you're always welcome to send that to us in advance so that we can answer them live as part of the webinar. We will have additional webinars that are upcoming, and if you're interested in registering for those, if you will visit our website and just select the 2021 webinar series, you can see all of the webinars that we have upcoming. If you're interested in going ahead and registering for the spring meeting, that will be at the end of April. You can use the spring meeting tab from our homepage as well. So with that, I know we're right at 11 o'clock, so I want to be very respectful of everyone's time. And again, Mariana, thank you so much again for your expertise and your willingness to share your knowledge with the industry. I think that we all agree that sustainability, this is, as Howard Hughes says, the wave of the future. And with people creating entire C-suites and entire job market dealing with sustainability now, this is certainly it's certainly a global expectation going into the future, but it's the epitome of what our industry has been doing all along. So it's nice to be able to have this information to point out that this is something that we are very well acquainted with, that we've been doing since before biblical times, and we are the best use of this resource. We know the best uses of this resource. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us. Mariana, thank you again. I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon in Spain, and we look forward to seeing everyone on Monday at our next conference. So thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.